Most people missed what just happened, and they missed it because they were looking for a business model instead of recognizing a shift in how humans learn, build, and compound skill. Somewhere along the way, coding, like everything else, got trapped inside an outcome first mindset where the only acceptable justification for effort was money, scale, or some version of external validation. Then tools showed up that collapsed friction so dramatically that the barrier to entry disappeared almost overnight. And instead of asking what that unlocked, most people immediately tried to reimpose the same old constraints on top of it. That's why every conversation drifts back to MVPs, monetization, and timelines. It's not because that's the most powerful use of the technology, it's because that's the only frame most people know how to operate inside. But that frame breaks under this new reality. And the people who recognize that early are the ones who end up with asymmetric advantage. What's actually happening is simpler and more disruptive. The loop has changed. Instead of learn, then build, then maybe improve, the loop is now build, then break, then ask, then adjust, then repeat, and it runs continuously. There is no clean separation between learning and doing anymore. They are the same activity. When someone sits down to build a Mancala bot or an Uno bot, or a small internal tool that no one else will ever use. What they are really doing is wiring their brain into a live system where feedback is immediate, explanation is on demand, and iteration is nearly frictionless. That loop compounds fast, faster than traditional study, faster than structured courses, faster than most professional environments that are still constrained by review cycles and legacy processes. The person inside that loop doesn't just learn concepts, they develop instinct. They start to feel when something is off, to recognize patterns before they can fully articulate them, to debug not just code, but thinking itself. That's why the obsession with doing it right is so misplaced. There is no stable definition of right in an environment where both the tools and the underlying capabilities are evolving in real time. The person who waits to understand everything before they start will always be behind the person who is comfortable operating inside partial understanding and tightening the loop as they go. What looks messy from the outside, half working systems, constant rewrites, heavy reliance on AI explanations, is actually the most efficient path to mastery in this context. You are not trying to produce a perfect artifact. You are training a system, and that system includes you. Every iteration refines both the code and the operator. Fun is not a side effect here, it is a signal. When someone says they are having more fun coding than they have in 15 years, that is not nostalgia or novelty. It is an indicator that they are operating in a high feedback, high agency environment. Fun correlates with engagement, and engagement correlates with time spent in the loop, and time spent in the loop correlates with skill acquisition. This is not soft or abstract. It is mechanical. If you enjoy the process, you stay in it longer. If you stay in it longer, you iterate more. If you iterate more, you learn faster. That's the compounding engine. Strip out the enjoyment by forcing every project to justify itself financially from day one, and you break the engine before it has time to produce anything meaningful. Creativity follows the same pattern. When the cost of experimentation drops close to zero, the only real constraint becomes whether you are willing to try things that might not matter in a traditional sense. Building a tool for a friend group, visualizing a data set no one asked for, training a bot to beat a game that has no commercial upside, these are not distractions. They are low risk environments where you can push ideas, test assumptions, and develop taste. Taste is what separates someone who can assemble components from someone who can design systems. It is built through exposure, iteration, and feedback, not through reading about best practices in isolation. There is also a timing component that most people underestimate. We are in a window where the technology is moving faster than the social layer that interprets it. That gap creates opportunity. If you stay close to the tools, if you are constantly building, breaking, asking, and adjusting, you are effectively co evolving with the technology. You are not learning a static skill, you are adapting alongside a moving target. That position is difficult to replicate later because once patterns stabilize, they get codified, taught, and commoditized. Right now, they are still fluid. The person who spends this phase in the loop builds an intuition that cannot be easily reverse engineered by someone who waits until everything is neatly packaged. This is where the idea of keeping on top of the technology actually matters. It is not about reading every update or chasing every new model release. It is about maintaining proximity. You are interacting with the tools daily, seeing what they can and cannot do, noticing where they fail, and adjusting your approach in response. That proximity gives you a practical understanding that is always current. You are not relying on secondhand interpretations or outdated mental models. You are calibrating in real time. The role of AI in this loop is often misunderstood as well. It is not replacing the builder, it is compressing the distance between intention and execution. When you can ask for an explanation of what just happened, get a usable answer, and immediately test that understanding, you are effectively shortening the feedback cycle. You are not outsourcing thinking, you are accelerating it. The key is that you remain the one driving the loop. The AI suggests, explains, and sometimes misleads. You evaluate, adjust, and decide what to keep. That interaction sharpens judgment over time. Blind reliance does not produce mastery, but active engagement does. All of this leads to a point that sounds counterintuitive in a culture obsessed with immediate results. The fastest path to meaningful return is not to optimize for return at the beginning. It is to optimize for loop quality. How quickly can you go from idea to execution to feedback to adjustment? How often can you run that cycle in a day, a week, a month? How deeply are you engaging with each iteration? If those variables are high, the outputs eventually become valuable, sometimes financially, sometimes in the form of leverage, sometimes in the form of opportunities that are not visible at the start, but they emerge from the process. They are not forced into it. When someone says, if it's not making money, it's a waste, what they are really revealing is a narrow definition of value and a short time horizon. They are looking for direct, immediate conversion between effort and income. That works in stable environments with well defined paths. It fails in environments where the underlying capabilities are shifting. In those environments, the highest leverage move is to become the kind of person who can navigate the change, not to extract value from a single snapshot of it. Mastery in a moving system is more valuable than optimization in a static one. So the framing shifts. You are not asking, is this project worth it in isolation? You are asking, is this loop making me better? Is it keeping me engaged? Is it increasing my ability to build, understand, and adapt? If the answer is yes, then the project is doing its job, even if it never becomes a product. In fact, many of the most valuable skills are built in projects that were never intended to scale. They were simply the environments where the builder pushed themselves far enough to grow. Over time, something else happens. The distinction between fun projects and serious work starts to blur. The skills, instincts, and patterns developed in those exploratory loops begin to show up in more formal contexts. Problems that used to feel complex become straightforward. Decisions that used to require heavy deliberation become intuitive. The builder moves faster with more confidence and with a clearer sense of what will and will not work. At that point, monetization is no longer a separate question. It is an extension of capability. You are not trying to force value out of something. You are operating at a level where value is a natural byproduct. And this is why the fixation on getting everything right at the beginning is so limiting. It delays entry into the loop, reduces iteration count, and often leads to brittle systems that were designed under incorrect assumptions. In contrast, the approach that looks less disciplined, building, breaking, asking, adjusting, produces more robust understanding over time. It embraces uncertainty instead of trying to eliminate it prematurely. It treats failure not as a signal to stop, but as data to incorporate. The language around vibe coding gets dismissed because it sounds informal, but the underlying behavior is precise. It is continuous iteration under low friction, guided by curiosity and sustained by engagement. It leverages tools that can explain, generate, and adapt in real time. It prioritizes proximity to the problem over adherence to predefined methods. When done seriously, it is not a shortcut, it is a different operating model. The people who treat it as a gimmick or a get rich quick path will cycle through it quickly and move on when it does not produce immediate results. The people who treat it as an environment to live inside, where they can build, learn, and evolve continuously, will accumulate something far more durable. They will develop the ability to pick up new tools, understand new systems, and adapt to new constraints with minimal friction. That is the asset, that is the leverage. So the point is not whether a given project makes money or whether it follows a perfect method. The point is whether you are in the loop, whether you are engaged, and whether you are improving. If you are, then the rest tends to take care of itself. If you are not, no amount of optimization or planning will compensate for the lack of iteration. Mastery is not something you step into fully formed. It is something you grow into by staying close to the work, by allowing yourself to experiment, and by accepting that understanding will always lag slightly behind action in a fast moving system. The people who are comfortable with that gap and who use tools to continuously close it are the ones who end up ahead. Jason Wade is a systems architect focused on long term control over how AI systems discover, classify, and rank information. As the builder behind NinjaAI.com, his work centers on AI visibility, including AI SEO, GEO, and AEO, with an emphasis on authority engineering and durable positioning inside machine driven discovery layers. He operates through repeatable frameworks designed to compound advantage over time, prioritizing proximity to emerging systems and continuous iteration over static best practices.